Hey, welcome back to Mojo. It's Anna Gibbs, and I have a really special guest with me today, my friend and colleague, Leigh Quintana. To know Leigh is to love her. She is truly a force of nature, and we're going to talk about a lot of things today that I think everyone can relate to. Running a business, being a mom, being a woman leader, being someone who is giving to a lot of people and always seeking to find the balance in that too. So Leigh is a very successful real estate leader. She has a team in the Hudson Valley area of New York. Her real estate team, the Quintana team, is one of the top producers in the region, and she has been in real estate for over 10 years. So I'm sure that you have learned a lot about yourself and about leadership in the last decade plus, Leigh. But first, I just want to say welcome to Monday Morning Mojo, and thank you for taking time out to have this conversation.
Thank you for having me. And of course, we've known each other for many years now, and I feel similarly about you as a woman leader, and I'm really grateful to be here.
Oh, so we're just going to fangirl on each other for a sec.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? But you
Not.
know, I wanted to have you on the show for so many reasons. One, because I admire the way you do life. I admire the way you show up and you're willing to do hard things. And I know that you care very much about your clients and your team. So I've watched you not only build this as a business, but really lead from your heart. And like I said, I think that a lot of people listening to the show can really relate to this or resonate. And as women in leadership, as women CEOs, you know, there are a lot of things that we have to balance. And I guess before we jump into that, we'll go back just a little bit. When you think about how you got started in the earlier days of your real estate career, what do you remember most about the version of yourself then?
Listen, I was a stay-at-home mom of three children when I started my career. And what I thought it was going to be was, I was going to sell some houses, I was going to have some flexibility, and I would like sling my kids into the car and go on showings, and it was like all fun and games for a little bit. And then I realized how big it could be. And I think a lot of people get into business, and not just into real estate, but into business, not understanding and not having a big picture of what the outcome could be for them.
For sure.
So when I first started, I was just naive. I was just naive, and I wanted to make some money, and it felt like a great job for me. It felt like it was flexible, but that's not what entrepreneurship really is. And so we have to start to pivot into a different direction, especially when we start to grow in a successful way.
You just said something too, that last statement is so true. And then you use the term naive, which I just had a conversation with someone a couple of days ago who said the same thing, that when they got into business, they didn't know all the things that it would take to grow the business, and they felt they were very naive. But they look back now and they feel like it actually was a strategic or competitive option or an asset to them that they didn't know. I don't know if you've ever thought of it that way, but sometimes, what we don't know keeps us from overthinking and overprocessing, and we just keep showing up every day and do the things. And so sometimes the naivety works to our advantage. So I don't know if you felt that way, but I had to jump on that.
It's very true. I would just go and do the things, right?
Yeah.
And at the time I was working for a small brokerage, and they would hand me something and I would just go and do the things. And it taught me a lot about, number one, showing up. Number two, being resilient, because at the time, like, life is so different now. Like 10 years ago, we didn't have as much technology, as much communication.
Yeah.
We couldn't check on people the way that we can now. I can remember being in the middle of the woods, like waiting for a client, and that person never showed up, and being like, okay, well, I have to drive an hour home now, but I tried, right? Would I do that today? No, my life looks very different today, but
Well, you've earned the right to make different choices now, right?
Right. But the showing up part is huge. And I think a lot of people get very frustrated very early on, very intimidated. There's a lot of noise around us.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about real estate. I'm talking about in business. And you're looking at other people and you're going, they're so successful, but you don't really know how successful they are. And you don't really know what it took for them to get there.
Isn't that true? Because I think we get stuck on what we're seeing today. And so we make a lot of judgment on that, or we just assume we know. And then we need to be able to look back and, or be willing to ask them to look back and ask them, how did you get started? And so, you talked about coming into real estate and why you came into real estate. At what point did you realize that you were building a business? Because a lot of people listening to this podcast are not in real estate, and it's building a business. And at what point did it sort of hit you that you were the owner of a business that happened to be in real estate?
So I went from one small brokerage to a national brokerage, and I was the youngest person in that brokerage at the time. And all I wanted to do was learn. I just wanted to learn. I knew I needed to learn. You get into this business, you know nothing. Taking your course, taking your exam, you don't know anything. You still need to go feet to the street, beat the street, right? To like figure out how to do this. And I was the youngest person in my brokerage at the time. And so I would sit with all the older women. I'd go into the office and I would sit and I would listen and I would talk and I would ask all these questions and try to figure this out. But I used to carry around what I called the deal bag. And my deal bag was a huge bag full of folders. And I would take all those folders out every single day and I would go down the list. Who am I talking to today? Who's going to sign a listing agreement? Which buyers am I working with? Am I prepared for my showings? And I just kept doing this consistently. And then we had a girl come in to the brokerage and she was 18 years old. Alex Taylor, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind me even bringing this up. She was 18 years old. She'd just gotten her real estate license. She had just graduated from high school, and I was the closest person to her age. Now, I'm in my 30s at this point. The closest person to her age, so we latched on to each other.
Sure.
And I became her mentor. And through that deal bag, working those deals every day, I would start to hand Alex some of my deals and say, like, call these people. Call these people, go on this appointment. I'll give you 25% to go on this appointment for me, because I started to get too busy. And once I started to get too busy, I knew I didn't want to lose money, but I wanted to help somebody else, and we were better as a team. Back then, they didn't recognize teams. Our brokerage wouldn't recognize teams. And so there was no real way to like work it, but we figured it out. And she was the first person who made me what I would consider the team leader at that point, the business owner. Yeah. And it was a beautiful...
Was it intentional? Because what I love about that story is you saw the opportunity to connect with someone, and then you wanted to help, you wanted to mentor. And did you realize that you were growing into a leadership position, or did it happen sort of organically enough that you were like, oh, is that what this is? I'm her leader now.
Yeah, it happened pretty naturally. I never thought about it necessarily that way. But then my broker at the time would ask me, he'd bought a brokerage in Florida, and he asked me to go down and teach marketing. Again, because I was the youngest person in that brokerage, he was like, wait, you're doing all these things that my other agents aren't doing. So I'm going to fly you down to, Tampa, and I want you to teach my agents down there how to use Facebook.
Well,
at the time we were just using Facebook.
But was it really because you were the youngest, or was it because you showed that you were doing something innovative? I mean, I want to make sure you're giving yourself credit. I think
probably both.
Yeah, okay.
Probably both.
Okay. Do you still think of yourself as innovative?
I think a little bit differently now, and I think this comes with growth. I think I understand the difference now between a visionary, right? Someone who holds the vision, and then pulling in all of the other people who can help you with that vision. Because when you're a solo entrepreneur, person in business, real estate agent, it's very difficult to do all of the things, not only right, but all of the things.
Yeah,
and so I think, growing into a leadership role is actually understanding that you're in a visionary position, and then understanding what that means.
Yeah. Yeah. And also accepting that you're responsible, right, for other people. I mean, being a leader comes with a lot of responsibility.
Yes.
And I know that you love your team, and I know that you really do love being a leader. But let's be honest, sometimes it's overwhelming, I would imagine too, right? I'm a leader. I've been there. When you know that you're responsible for other people, that responsibility can be heavy sometimes. Do you feel like that is true?
It is true. I think the difference is understanding that it's not your responsibility to take care of, it is your responsibility to grow them into leadership also for themselves, right? So the goal isn't necessarily to hand them business or to handhold everybody around you as a leader. It is to give them the confidence, the ability, and the wisdom to grow themselves so that they're self-sustainable and they're helping your business grow.
No, I agree, and that's very well said. And I think that as leaders, we should always look at how we're equipping people, right, to be self-sufficient and to be leaders themselves. And sometimes that starts with how we lead ourselves. So
Yeah.
I agree. So Leigh, as a woman leading a business and a team, what have you learned about owning your voice and your authority in the industry and in the business world in general?
A couple comments on this. I don't want to discredit men because I think that, times have changed a little bit where there's a little more balance in families for the most part. But I'm a single mother of 3 children, right? So I look at myself as truly as like a woman leader and head of my own household. And I have had to step into roles in my personal life and in my business that might have been taken by somebody else. So having very clear boundaries makes for easy decision making and good decision making. And also, no is a complete sentence.
Yes, I've said that so many times. Yes.
Let's be honest here.
Yes.
I think that we're so afraid as women to be called the B word or something like not nice, right, about us when we say no.
Aggressive in business.
We're aggressive. Right? But guess what? Men can be just as aggressive.
Yeah.
But not called labeled that. Right.
No, they're labeled, go-getters and titans and all these other things.
And we wouldn't be here if we weren't equal go-getters. And we wouldn't be here without understanding that no is a complete sentence. And I'm okay with that. You have to stand in your own power and be like, okay,
have you always
hate me.
Have you always been strong that way or okay with it? No.
No, I haven't. I'm in my 40s now. I had my first child at 23, right? I was married and had my first child at 23 and started my business, my real business at 30 years old. So I had like a growth period from my early 20s to 30s where I was doing what most 30 to 40-year-old women were doing. So I had a period of time where I really had to grow up very quickly, right? To do what all the other mothers were doing. And once I started my business and trying to balance children and work and a lot of other personal things, I had to really become comfortable with being uncomfortable, if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense. And I think when we get uncomfortable, that's where growth happens, right? The growth is just not going to accelerate when you're stuck in a comfort zone. Right. And sometimes life's challenges, I know it's true, it's been true for me, life's challenges are the best teacher. And I love that you said what you described was this growth, but really I think transformation of what a 20-year-old woman looks like compared to a woman now in her 40s who's had a lot of life happen in between. And that's true for a lot of us, but I love that, you're sharing that no is a complete sentence. And you're right, the boundaries do give us the opportunity to make better decisions. And if we don't have our boundaries intact, we can find ourselves really on the other side of our values, and that's a lot of stress. So another thing I know that is true about you, and we're both in the Keller Williams world, and there's a lot of opportunity for education and personal development. How important is personal development to you, and what does that look like for you today?
It's very important. I wouldn't be where I am today without personal development. For me, personal development really looked like how going from making money, from actively running around and like making money and making all the things happen, like I was the fixer, like I would go in and just fix everything and do everything, and created a lot of burnout for myself, truthfully. And you know this. I mean, you've watched me physically burn out, and this is an entrepreneurial problem that I think all people have, but especially women, because we're trying to balance families and we're trying to balance, 6-figure incomes and teams and businesses and all this.
It's a part of the book I'm writing right now.
It's bananas, right? Yeah. Like women's lib did good things for us and bad things for us at the same time, right? Because now we are expected to perform at the same level while raising children or whatever else, your parents, taking care of your parents, whatever it is. So for me, personal development looked like hiring a coach. Coach, how do I run a business? How do I balance my books? What is a profit margin? Where do I go from here? Asking somebody who's smarter than me, who knows more than me, to help me on my journey so that I don't fall flat. Because, and you know this, you're a Virgo too, we're both Virgos. I'm like, I'm going to figure it out. Every minor little detail I'm going to do myself, and I'm going to write it down. I've copious notes for our interview today that I haven't even looked at.
That you haven't even looked at, right?
No. But, we always want to do it on our own. And I think that personal development for me looked like calling in other people and saying, I don't need control over everything. I can't live that way. I can't succeed that way, and I will die if I don't give up control.
I'm glad you said that. I mean, that's it. Like we can live in a lot of different ways, but what is the cost?
What's the cost?
When you talk about burnout, that's another thing that I think a lot of women struggle with but don't want to talk about.
Yep.
Because we worry that people will judge or label us or think that suddenly we've lost the it factor and we can't get it done. But it's not. It's literally a physical and emotional response to taking on too much. And I think if we're going to lead sustainable businesses and we're going to really be great leaders to other people, we have to know what our limits are. And that doesn't mean that you can't think big or that you can't scale, but there is a capacity that shows up at some point, right?
Yeah. Again, being the visionary is one thing. You can't do everything. It just doesn't work. And so part of that is giving up control, learning how to give up control, learning how to be comfortable with giving up control, and leaning on other people for help. And that has been my personal experience in terms of personal growth.
Yeah. How has that changed things for you?
For the better, that's for sure. I have a wonderful staff that I love, 2 pieces. I could not live without them. Sometimes they mess up. And I've had other assistants and staff members that have come and gone. They weren't a good fit, whatever happens. And I think a lot of women specifically, we get stuck in this like time sunk fallacy. So, you have an assistant for a couple years and they're just kind of not the right fit, but you don't want to start over again. Yeah. And Gary Keller's the best at saying this. He's like, slow to hire, quick to fire, Yeah. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And you can't be unapologetic about that, right? Yeah. You have to just say, I'm sorry, this isn't working. Pull in that person that's working for you, because once you can start leveraging your time, right, in that manner, it changes your life for the better. You get to go back to being that visionary. You get to go back to, making the decisions that really matter, the big rocks for your business, the big rocks for your company, the big rocks for your team. Those are the big things that you need to be doing as the visionary, as the person who's leading. And then you have these great people who surround you, who hear you, who see you, and who go to work at that. That's a blessing.
Yeah. It is a blessing. And I think, listen, I get it. We've all been there, I think, especially if we started as a solopreneur and you were the person who had to do so many things, right? You call a staff meeting and it's you at every seat at the table. Yet when you start to grow and you hire the right talent and you do experience leverage, you have to be willing to let go of some of those tasks, because you then get to step into a much bigger capacity as a leader and as a visionary, and you just don't need to worry about some of the details. And I've talked about it here on the podcast too, the 80-20 rule. So you learn like how your priorities shift, and then your 80% can become somebody else's 20%.
That's right.
Yeah.
It also creates some balance and some structure in your life that you didn't even know you were missing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in personal life as well as your career, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So I want to shift to a question around, more about who you are personally. You said that you're a single mom, and I know that you've had a lot of growth, and we talked about personal development a little bit. And we all go through different seasons in our lives. What have you learned about yourself from some of the more challenging times in your life? Because you, like a lot of us, we're navigating some things while continuing to run the business, right? We don't have the luxury to say, oh my gosh, this personal thing just popped up. I think I need to take a sabbatical, right? We have to continue to focus on all of the things. So I'm not asking you to share anything you're not willing to share, but just the idea of how you're navigating all of it. And maybe if you have any words of wisdom that someone at this moment is probably going through it and needs to hear something, what is it?
So you just said wisdom, which is really my response to this, to your question, is very simple. Sometimes we go through seasons of life where we feel like we are losing or have lost everything and we have to start over. That can be so paralyzing emotionally, physically, financially. But the truth of the matter is, what you didn't lose is the wisdom that you have gained all of this time in order to get where you are.
Beautiful.
And I have to be so honest, not all of us have natural resilience. We have to learn how to be resilient. We have to try to be resilient. But when you're surrounded by the right people, and you have to be one of those people, right? Your inner voice has to be one of those people.
Saying, right? Yeah.
Yes, you have to trust yourself.
Yes.
And I am notorious for calling my mom, not wanting to worry her, being like, Mom, my whole life is falling apart, but don't worry, I'm gonna figure it out. I always do. So there's something about trusting yourself and carrying that wisdom from the past. I mean, that's what it is, right? We gain wisdom from living a life. You take that wisdom with you moving forward, and you will figure it out.
That is some good stuff, I have to say. And that is true, because we can sometimes forget for a minute, and we have to, I love what you said, because you have to carry all those lessons with you. That is what builds your wisdom. Your experience, your story is there for a reason. And then you get to a place, because I've been through some challenging seasons in my life too, and I've had to start over with nothing more than once. And so I get it. And yet you get to a point where your story, it moves from being your story and your lessons to help you continue to navigate, to now you're sharing those stories and pieces of wisdom with other people.
Yeah.
And that's where I realized that at some point your story isn't yours. It's really for someone else. And
it's true.
Our experiences, no one can argue with your experience, right? Because it's your experience. Yet there's so much in that experience that you can use to teach other people. And maybe you're there, maybe you're not there yet, but I'm sure you've been in a position where you've been able to impart some wisdom on someone else, especially another woman. You're doing it right now, and that's a full circle moment, right? That's what makes the pain feel a little bit less painful, and you realize, okay, now I see the reason for it.
The big picture. And in our profession, my profession specifically, we're meeting people every single day who are going through challenging moments, and it allows you to have high emotional intelligence with them. It allows you to look them in the eyes and truthfully say, I'm here for you. Like, I see what's happening. I understand what's happening, and you're not alone. And it stops becoming about a paycheck and starts really helping somebody else work through something difficult in their life, because you care, because you understand.
Yeah.
And I think we lack these days a lot of emotional intelligence because of social media and things like that, and everybody's looking, and it's just so much noise.
Yeah.
And it gives me great joy, even in difficult moments with clients, to sit down at the table and go, I've been right where you are, and I can promise you, you will get through this. It will be hard, but you will get to the other side, whatever that looks like for them, because everybody's journey is different. But there is another side. This isn't the end.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that just popped into my mind as you were talking is, I think the word balance came into mind. And I think we talk a lot about balance, and even this conversation is alluding to personal life, professional life. You're working with clients who also have life happening around them, right? And so how do you define balance? What do you think about the term balance? Is it something that we can strive for? Is it something that sets us up for feeling failure? Because, some people think about it in terms of flow versus balance. What is true for you? How do you manage all the things that you have going on in your world?
Balance for me specifically means still having joy in my life. Work is not everything. I am so sorry. You can drop dead tomorrow, and it happens. And if you can't stop, breathe, find joy, what is balance, right? I started mountain bike riding at 39 years old, which is like really strange and random, right? Really strange and random.
It's become a passion for you, I have to say.
I love it. I love it. I own 3 bikes. I have all these bikes now. I'm like a bike fanatic. But starting that for me meant that I had to do nothing but focus on that thing that I was doing, because it's dangerous if you don't. You're going to run into a tree. You're going to fall off your bike. You're going to really hurt yourself. It allowed me to shut off my brain. It allowed me to completely shut off my brain for anything else and just do that and focus on that. And it brought me great joy, and it gave me peace, and it gave me quiet, and it gave me all these things that I was lacking in my real life, in my home with my children, running my team, working with clients. Everything is spinning. So it's finding one, it's just even one thing, right, that brings you joy, that allows you to shut down. It could be meditation, it could be yoga, Pilates, whatever. It could be nothing physical, reading a book, allowing you to shut down from every single thing that feels like a responsibility, because let's face it, we have so many these days.
Yeah.
And just giving you joy, peace, and quiet.
What I'm hearing you say too, that is a process of shutting out the outside world for a minute and really getting connected back
To you, to
when
your
you're
inner
on that
voice.
bike. When you're on that bike, like, what are you thinking about? What do you, like, are you talking to yourself? I mean, that's got to be a moment where you literally are escaping the outside world. And when you get on that bike, you have to focus, like you said, but you're also in your own thoughts now.
Yeah, you're thinking about the path ahead of you. If I go over this rock, I could go this way or that way. Do I want to go into this tree or that one? Where am I going? Like you have to really focus on.
Leigh, that was so wise. That was like a little metaphor for life, I have to say. That was kind
It
of
is.
badass.
It is. And you have to look right in front of you and go like, where am I going? And what's the outcome of which way,
Wow.
So it taught me a lot of discipline in that respect, where when I got on that bike, I could not answer a work phone call. I could not answer a child phone call. I do listen to music now. I've gotten like confident enough to like have a headphone in.
Cool.
But it gives me, it gives me that space, but it also gives me the ability to be with myself and listen to my inner voice and trust my decisions and trust myself and trust my inner voice. And I think that a lot of women in business, with all the noise and all the things and all the flashy, loud, I'm this, I'm that, stop trusting themselves.
Yeah. I talk about that with a lot of women in business. That comes up a lot because we sort of the inner voice gets drowned out, like you said, by all the noise. And then the further we get away from it, we lose that connection and we start to doubt whether or not we can figure it out. I mean, I think it's an opportunity. We can always come back to it. But when you're disconnected from that voice, have you ever felt like you were in the past?
Oh, yeah.
How did it make you feel?
Out of control. It makes you, it like checks your self-esteem. Like all of a sudden you're like, I'm not good enough. I'm not good. I've always been good enough. I've always been good enough. But all of a sudden I'm not good enough. Like what's happening here? And so it creates self-doubt is really what it does. And that's not fair. And as a woman, specifically as a woman, there's so much outside pressure, I think, that creates self-doubt in women. And we have to go back inside and go, listen, we have women's intuition. Men don't have women's intuition. Let's be honest.
I agree. I think we're just completely built and wired in a very different way.
We're aliens. We grow babies, like all this stuff. Like, let's be honest here. I mean, who are we kidding? We really have so much power You have to learn how to harness it. You have to listen to yourself, and you have to be okay with the outcome, whatever it is.
Absolutely. And know that you can always figure it out. Okay, so Leigh, if you could go back to that 20-year-old version of yourself, right? Or maybe even the 30-year-old who started in real estate at the time, what advice would you have for her knowing what you know now?
Okay, so I'm going to bring something a little bit personal in about this. I went through a horrific divorce, and I was not the bookkeeper in our marriage. And so I did not keep an eye on all of my earnings and where all of the money went, right? So when I went through the divorce and started to see like all the things, I had no relationship with money. I'm going to be so honest with you. I just didn't. It was in my bank account or it wasn't, okay? And again, that came from not knowing how to run a business. So if I were to go back in time, I would have taught that girl specifically how to run that business first. I would have made sure that I was secure in bookkeeping, in my own marriage, in my own family. I would have absolutely dotted the I's and crossed the T's so that I understood what was really going on in my life. I went out and I made the money and it got deposited into an account and then I just didn't know where it went. And that really, really sucked and it really blew up my life in a lot of ways. But the fact of the matter is, I'll figure it out.
Yes. Well, and then thank you for sharing that because I know you're not alone in that. I think that that can happen to a lot of women and for different reasons and in different degrees too, because I think too for a lot of us we go out there, we're builders, we're grinders, we're the ones who are making it happen, and we may not be paying enough attention to what happens when the money comes in and how we allocate, how we use it, what's left, right? Because I think a lot of people in business, and I've seen it a lot in real estate, but in other businesses too, they're very good at making money, but it's really not about how much you make. It's about how much you keep. And
Yep.
it's about, what that money starts to do for you and how you use it or invest it and how it grows. So I think you're brave to share that because, again, I think we hold back information from ourselves first and then from other people because we are concerned about what their response will be. But at the end of the day, if we don't talk about the challenges, we can't fix them either. And I know when we talked about you coming on the podcast, we said we wanted this to be an honest conversation that other women would relate to, and I think you can't do that if you don't share and spill the tea a little bit.
You got to spill the tea sometimes in vulnerability. It's okay to have these things happen in life. It gives me great pleasure to be able to share with other women the bad experience that I went through. Why wouldn't I help somebody else if I can?
So what, and I know it was painful for you when you look back now on this part of your life, going through your divorce. What did those, it was about 2 years, I would say, right? And maybe you're still going through some stuff, right? It's not like it miraculously goes away, but
Never ends.
All right, we'll leave that there. But what have you learned about yourself in the last couple of years?
Do you want me to be cheeky about this one?
No,
I
want to
don't.
be you.
I don't need a man for anything. I mean,
Okay. Welcome to part 2 of this podcast.
we could talk about that later. No, honestly, Anna, listen, you know this about me. I'm comedic. This is how I get through all like my difficulty. Like I might as well, like people ask me like, what do you do for a living? I'm like,
That's
oh,
a
I'm
Virgo
stand-up.
trait
I'm
too,
a stand-up comedian. Yeah, I'm a stand-up comedian. Like, let me tell you what I went through. What has it taught me? I mean, really, it's taught me again that first of all, being alone is okay. I think we have this this fallacy that like we have to be with somebody and we have, we need people for other things and to grow and to live. You don't. And it goes right back to that inner voice and trusting yourself and having faith in yourself. You can find a lot of joy, happiness, and peace without somebody in your world, if it's coming to that for you. But it also has taught me to pick
I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm just gonna say, but even if you're with a partner, right? I have a wonderful husband and
love your husband.
Well, who doesn't love Matt? I mean, shout out to Matt Gibbs.
Shout out to Matt.
Here's the thing. I too, and we've talked about this, him and I love spending time with myself and He knows that. He likes spending time with himself too. And when we come together, it's that much better. And I just think that, whether you're with a partner or not, you have to learn who you are and you have to learn how to be your best friend. Is that what you were gonna like what you were going
Yeah.
into?
Yeah, you really have to learn how to love yourself, be your
Yes.
best friend, trust yourself. Again, back to the trust, back to the wisdom, all of that. And I think, sometimes we're in relationships where we start to rely on other people and we kind of forget who we are.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's really nice, even when you're picking yourself off the floor, and I mean physically picking yourself up off the floor, to remember who you are.
Yes.
And when you can do that and it creates such resilience in your life, you're like, go ahead, punch me again. Like, I'm not going anywhere except for up. And that's because of me, not because of you.
Right.
And I think that's a really beautiful thing for women specifically, to know that they don't need anybody. Having somebody or being with somebody, that's
It's
a
a
gift.
choice.
It's a pleasure and it's a choice. But
That's
it's
right.
not a need.
That's right. Amen to that.
Yeah.
And something else you just said about, well, what I took from what you said, sometimes we can give so much in a relationship. And whether it's a personal relationship or even a professional partnership relationship, that you can lose pieces of yourself in the process. And I think that, that's something else I've gotten clearer about and something that I write about in this book that's coming out. And I talk about absorption.
Yeah.
And sometimes we absorb pieces of other people's beliefs and personalities, and we take on the identity of the relationship so much. And then that causes the drifting away from who we knew always to be. And that's the whole identity conflict that shows up sometimes. And
It's like an identity crisis, honestly.
Yeah.
And I really think that it goes back to values. And I think you and I are aligned in this. Like, you really have to have your own values, and you have to believe in them, and you have to practice them.
Yes.
And you have to really say no to anyone who's crossing that line. That boundary is important. You're not my value. If our values are not in alignment, we're not in alignment.
Preach,
And
sister.
yeah. that's kind of what happens. And I think it happens to a lot of people as they get older. Remember, I was married in my 20s, right? So that's young. You have different ideals and different values
For sure.
at that age. And as you grow, if you are not in alignment with somebody as you grow, like you said, in partnership, in business, in relationship, in anything, if you are not in alignment, it causes resentment, it causes drifting, it causes all of those things. And so you got to check in once in a while. Are we in alignment? Do we have the same values? And I do it with my team too. We do our mission, vision, and values every year to make sure we're in alignment. And
That's a really big part of building teams and businesses. And I've seen that, become a challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And then they're, sort of scratching their head, like, why are we not working well together? Because your values are out of alignment. And look, it's okay. Sometimes it's okay to say, oh, our values are off, because one of two things will happen. Either you bring it back in alignment, or you may decide, oh my gosh, we're at different places and maybe we're not going to continue this relationship. I mean, even with clients, right? I mean, there are values that you hold true in your business, and that attracts people, whether they know it or not, or you even recognize it or not. People are being attracted to you because of that. And
100%.
so just to pivot back to business and make sure people know a little bit more about your real estate team, what kind of experience do you want people to have when they work with you? What are the values that are important to you and the team?
I keep a small team. I don't have a large team for a reason. I keep a small team because of our values, but mostly our team is a family and they treat each other that way. And so there are some things like they know I will not accept. I've never, ever once in all the years that I've had a team had one team member come like talk poorly about another team member,
That's
to
awesome.
me,
That's
because
a
they
high
know that's a no-go for me.
Yeah.
Like I will not allow any toxicity within that sphere. They work so well together. They're like a family. They really help each other out, and they do everything, that they can to grow one another, which is the most beautiful thing. And that's what you can hope for as a team leader. You're like, oh my God, they're listening. They're growing each other. They love each other,
being
right?
a parent.
It's like, yeah. I'm always like, I'm their mom. But our clients really share in that experience with us. And so I have to say that so many of our clients have become, our friends. And I would call everybody on my team emotionally intelligent. That's something that's really important for me, that they
Yeah,
can
you
go
talked
in.
about it a couple times here, so I could tell that it is.
It's really high on my priority list. We can make tons of money. We can go out and run Zillow buyers around and have no connection and all the other things. It doesn't make for a sustainable business. I mean, you know this about me. I don't even pay for advertising.
I know.
All of my business is organic. Okay. Everything is repeat and referral and from friends and from past clients. And that is because we do such a good job at taking care of our clients like family. That's how we run and operate our business. And that's my goal. That's always been my goal.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, so let me do a couple things rapid fire. So this is Monday Morning Mojo. What does mojo mean to you?
Mojo is like, for me, it's like that. I don't want to call it like, it's that little secret power that you have. It's your mojo. It's like your thing,
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
even know how to describe it. It's your
Well,
little
no,
secret
you
power.
did really good because actually the definition, it pertains to magic. So
Oh, I was
mojo.
sparkling when I said that.
Yeah, and you were doing that movement in case you
Yeah.
guys aren't watching on YouTube. She was making all those little hand movements about it. But yeah, it's a lot about that energy, but it's your inner energy. It's that magic that you have. And look, sometimes we lose it and sometimes we, connect with it. So when you lose your mojo, what do you do to get it back?
Honestly, when you lose first of all, you shouldn't be losing your mojo, but if you do lose your mojo, you got to go back to that inner voice, right? It's about who am I, where am I, what am I doing? Sit with it. My daughter plays volleyball. I know you said this is rapid fire, but I've just got to say this.
No,
My
tell
daughter
me.
plays volleyball. She's excellent. She's so cool. I like idolize her. But when her and her team are like they're not doing well, I'm always yelling from the sidelines, slow it down. Slow it down. I'm sick of this hustle culture. Like, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. Like, ugh, gag me. Slow it down.
Maybe we'll do another episode, Lee, and we'll talk about that. No, really, because
I
I'm
know.
working through that too, even on a personal level,
Yeah.
because I have been in business, I'm 54 and
No, you're not.
I am 54. I started at 18 in
Yep.
sales and
Yep.
business. And so you're talking a long time, right? Over 30 years. And I was raised in a culture where it was about the hustle and the grind.
Yep.
And it was part of life then, but it was also part of how then as a woman. And I was 18 years old working at a pharmaceutical company. There was nobody that young. I
And
went
no
right
women.
and no women. I went right out of high school into sales and got promoted very quickly because I happened to sit outside the vice president of sales office. So he heard me and he mentored me. And so that's a whole other story. But that too was a time where I had to prove something. And I was also in a very difficult marriage, an abusive marriage. So
Okay.
I think when I was at work, it was my place to really get the control and to show my worth in a
Yep.
way, right? So that created a lot of conditioning. And so it's funny because I help other people look at other things like significance and the value of being strategic and maybe taking a moment to ask better questions and slow it down. But by nature, I'm wound tight like a clock. And so I've been doing a lot of thinking and researching and talking about, is that hustle and grind really healthy? And it doesn't make it bad per se because it worked for a long time for me and a lot of other people. But I know I can think of several women right now that I know in the business world who are like me from that mindset and that culture, and they don't even know how to take a day off. And we could go back to the burnout conversation, right? So I appreciate you saying that because I think some of us need to think about how we want to feel doing what we're doing.
Yep. Slow down. And when you're getting sloppy in your life,
Yeah.
slow down.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to slow down to speed up. I
Yep.
never understood that quote in my
Yeah.
20s and 30s. I didn't. I used to hear that and I was like, that just irritates me. Full transparency. I used to hear that. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. I don't know what that means. I'm just going to keep busting through the wall and do what I got to do.
Yeah.
Now I see the wisdom in that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to move into this last question because I'm telling we might have to do another episode. This is
We
good.
can. Yeah.
What is a question that you wished I'd asked that I haven't asked? Like, what is there that you want to, something you want to share to, with the listeners about you, your business, or any advice, anything at all that, this
Look,
is your.
now I'm looking at my notes. Not necessarily a question. I'll share one more thing. You have to have passion for the things that you're doing. We cannot take the money with us when we go. We cannot get the time back with our children that we forfeit for work. We cannot visit the parent one more time, right? Like, all of this is so true. My one other message to women would be, if you're not finding passion in what you're doing, then what are you doing it for?
Oof. That was good. We have to end on that because I think that's what someone needed to hear.
I love you so much.
I love you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it was amazing. And so if anyone would like to connect with you for any reason, real estate or otherwise, you may have inspired someone to want to talk to you. How do they find you? How do they reach you?
So you can find me on Instagram, or you can text me on my cell phone, 845-853-6910. And I'd be happy to talk to anybody about anything we've discussed today.
Oh, that's awesome. You're in real estate when you're willing to share your cell phone number on
Publicly?
an international podcast.
Call me up.
I love it. Thank you for being on the show. And I just want to thank all of you for listening and for being a part of this community. It means a lot to me that we can have these conversations and, for us to be able to talk so openly. And I know that someone was really inspired or blessed by the conversation today. So Leigh, thanks again.
Thank you
And
too.
I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thanks again.